Greetings from Chicago and welcome to the Women in Design video series by Chykalophia. On each video, we spotlight talented and inspired women in design community, from print to digital, illustrator to animator, and others in between. I'm Ari Krzyzak, co-founder and chief creative officer at Chykalophia, a branding consultancy helping women-led businesses build proper brand foundation, strong communities, and lasting relationships. Now today, we will be chatting with Becky Mickletz, brand developer and designer of Remix Marketing. We'll chat with Becky about creative confidence. How do you present your design concept to clients and how to build your confidence as a woman business owner? Becky is originally from the exotic land of Pennsylvania, spent 6 years in LA, and now reside in Denver. With nearly a decade in event and brand development experience with companies such as Fast Company, Denver Design Week, and South by Southwest, she has developed a career to help companies find their unique voice and implement it into their marketing through design and branding. Welcome, Becky. How are you doing today?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm good. That was a great intro.
I'm just so excited to finally get a chance to meet you, even though it's virtual, and get to know you a little bit better, as well as spotlighting your career and your experience in design. So how about we start getting into the nitty-gritty and some of the questions that I already prepared for you.
Yes, I love the nitty-gritty.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Okay, so how about we start with you. Obviously, you are our spotlight for today. And I'm curious, what is the inspiration or what really inspired you to build a career in design?
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny. I never thought I would be strictly in design. I studied photography for a long time, in concert photography in particular. And the music world really drew me into the kind of community that comes within, I guess, creative fields in that sense. And so I'm shooting these concerts and everything. Then I realized, wow, photography equipment's very expensive. And I went back to my roots in design, and then I kind of never went back. And it evolved pretty quickly after I graduated, where I started working with a brand development company that works specifically in the music industry. And I was like, oh, wow, I can combine this now in a different way. So that led me to working events like South by Southwest and having this really collaborative experience. So I still got to do design, but it was now not just the forefront. It became more about partnerships and the event experience. And for me, it really kind of boiled down to the experience side, like that being the key word, because at the end of the day, whether we are doing illustration, social media, poster design, it's still an experience for the consumer and the person looking at it. Like, you want to make something memorable. You want to make something timeless. Yeah. And especially in that event world, there's so much competition and so much that gets Instagrammed and then forgotten. So it became this new challenge that school didn't teach me, nothing taught me. It was just real world, where I'm like, oh yeah, at the end of the day, as a creative, I'm a problem solver. And how can I take everything to the next level? So it kind of came full circle in a weird way, I guess a more non-traditional way than schooling, where it's you go in with a major, you leave and you do this. And my career creatively just kind of evolved in that sense.
Wow. I feel like from photography and then back to design, and then still using design in the event world, specifically for event marketing itself, right? That is quite a journey. And I feel like event marketing on its own is a very specific niche, because we do our own events as well here in Chicago. And Chicago being one of the big cities in the US, it also has tons and tons of events happening every single day.
Yeah.
How would you stand out, right? Unless you have a really good positioning for your marketing, and then you have a really good messaging that really talks to the audience, and implementing a really not just catchy, but also a relevant design and visual to really attract the interest is very crucial. So tell us a little bit more about that experience in terms of how do you see event marketing evolve from the first time you jumping into the industry and how it has evolved today?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny because I worked and went to South by Southwest, for example, for 7 years, like 7 different times. And this year,
Wow.
last, I'd taken like 2 years off from it and now just went back this year. So it was super cool to see how it's evolved even in 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's still, to me, the brand activations and the events that that stood out to me the most were from like 5 years ago. And so it really goes to show you how getting back to the brass tacks again of problem solving, of like, okay, who do we want to attract and what do they like? What's a day in the life like for them? And just analyzing the audience a lot more. So yes, that's design related, but that it really just comes down to, well, who do we want to attract and why? And so, yeah, a lot of those activations I was thinking about, I was like, man, they're from years ago and I still talk about them. So that says something. And that's before Instagram was really a thing. It was,
Mm-hmm.
I think like the first year I worked, Instagram was just kind of coming around. So
Oh, wow.
having that other platform, which now, yes, works for us in some ways where we get to shine, but then it also is competitive.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of like the future of it all, I'm not sure where it's going to go. I think people are focusing almost too much on making Instagrammable moments at events. I mean, I know there's almost all of them have an Instagram wall, or something like that. So it draws people in for sure, but I think don't get so caught up in that end of it, and make sure you're actually making something interactive too.
Mm-hmm.
That's where these partnerships lead. That's where like an actual community is built. And at the end of the day, it's like you're having an event because you want people to attend and enjoy themselves, not just be sitting there on their phones. So
Yeah.
I think that that's what like really stands out from a successful event versus one that isn't as successful. Maybe it's, are the people interacting, like, or are they just looking at their cell phones? Because that says something,
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like I can't speak for myself on that one, because whenever I go to events, right, if the organizer do a really good job, you probably won't even need to look at your phone. Not
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
But if the organizer is not doing their job properly, you'll be left like, okay, what am I even doing here? It's like,
Yeah.
this is so not a good time for me to spend my time, right? I feel like you gotta have a really clear vision in terms of like, how do you want to give the experience to the audience? So thank you so much for sharing all of those.
Oh,
And here's another thing that I'm also curious about you, because I know when we talked last time, you mentioned that you were in a competition for a designer challenge put on by the Design Kids Denver, right?
yeah.
And Creative Mornings. And you
Correct.
told me that after 24 hours of conceptualizing, each designer was given 45 minutes of concept. That is pretty fast, by the way. And then design and then present your interpretation live. How many people were there?
Ooh, I think like I want to say between 150 and 200, like that
Wow.
ended up coming through.
Yeah.
Had the designers kind of separated into their own rooms too, so there were 2 and 2.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was definitely a ride, because especially being a person who works, either from home or I meet out with clients a lot or digitally. I haven't worked in an office space with somebody over my shoulder
Oh, no.
years, and I forgot what that was like, to not just be in my own bubble again. And it's like, oh, people are watching because this is something they can't do or they want to learn from me.
Yeah.
And I consider myself a grandmother with some technology. I'm like 80 years old with some of the new programs and everything. I'm still learning. Oh my God. Well, I feel that way, but yeah, like I'm still learning all the little shortcuts and things like that.
Yeah.
Because again, in school, they don't teach you that. They're like, okay, figure it out on
I
your
know,
own.
right?
And now, especially with technology advancing as fast as it is, yeah. So it was a lot of pressure in that sense that I didn't expect, because I had a really clear vision of what I wanted to do. And what I wanted to execute, but then I felt like a deer in headlights when it came down to it. But I ended up winning, so I did something right.
Definitely says something.
It also goes to show that you can be the best designer in the world, but if you don't have the concept behind it, that's where I said even before, like we focus so much on what's popular on social media now and in the digital space that we forget that like face-to-face interaction sometimes that really people are experiencing more. So that's what I pride myself in, is I'm really good at conceptualizing and building out these ideas. And I'm still, you know, I'm always practicing to be a better designer. I don't think I'll ever not stop that. But that I think is what kind of carried me through into actually winning it.
That's fantastic. And congrats, by the way, on that one. Although I'm curious, in terms of like your own experience through that challenge, how did you, I'm just going to say it, how did you build that confidence? I know conceptualizing is one of your like forte. And for some people, even though that you're really good at what you do, right? Sometimes building that confidence can be really challenging, especially when you are presenting to like live audience and there's so many eyes like fix at you and really like expecting, okay, wow me, please.
Yeah. And
how
not
do you do that?
Final product. Yeah. And that's kind of funny part of it too. It's like, you know, on social media, we just see the final product. You don't see that dirty work. So it does kind of add that level of pressure. But honestly, I think it's years of rejection in a way, like years of getting shut down, critiqued, having work torn apart. Like you can really only go up from there. I, you know, especially coming from LA to Denver, I went from being a small fish in a very large pond to still a small fish, but a smaller pond. And so I was forced to find my voice and forced to like really like self-reflect and see what was going to make me stand out. I didn't have connections here. I had some connections in California, but I had nothing here. I was really starting from scratch. So it was a lot of self-reflection, I would say, in that. Because at that point in moving here, I had been into my business for 5 years, which usually they say it's like the 5-year hump. And when you go from a big city to another big city, it almost feels like you restart that cycle. Different challenges, you know? So and actually a buddy of mine recently told me about this guy who was so terrified of like the fear of rejection that he challenged himself to 100 days of rejection. So it was like, he'd ask a girl on a date, you know, like he would go to the bank and be like, can I have $500, you know, and see what they would say, you know, that wasn't his money. So some of it was very just out there, but get used to hearing no. And I think that that's super important in building your confidence because, you know, when I first graduated, I took everything so personally. I could admit that. I was like, oh my God, they don't like this. Like, this makes me question my worth. And now it's like, no, you know, like there's a quote that, geez, I think I saw on a Pinterest board years ago, that was, you can be the juiciest, ripest peach, but somebody's still not going to like peaches. And I always think of that because it's so true. It's like, you know, I think it's important as individuals to sit down and think, okay, what does success look like to me? Not to everybody else. You know, like we tend to run on fear of failure. And failure doesn't always mean, oh, the building like caught on fire. I'm my own worst critic in that sense. So I still very much get in my head of what failure looks like to me. But in terms of the eyes of other people, I guess I kind of stopped giving a shit.
I like that.
That's the way of putting it. Like, I think I stopped caring as much. And that then translated into my work more naturally. It translated into my presence more. Because I have friends who even came to that competition, or they've seen me work at workshops and talk. They're like, oh my God, you need to teach me how to talk. And I'm like, you just have to get comfortable in your own skin. It really, you know, it's easier said than done, I know, but it's taken years to get there, years and years and years. So
honestly, you touch on every single thing that I also keep hearing from others, right? Because I feel like if you're not gonna, how do I say this? Like, having someone to reject your ideas or even saying no to you the first time or first few times, it's gonna hurt. It's always gonna hurt. But the thing is that you are not meant for everyone, not even for everything. And I think we sometimes forget that. And I mean, I'm guilty of that as well, because I feel when I was in my 20s, I feel like every single little thing I take it for personally. And then someone told me, it's like, wait until you're 30 and then you're just gonna don't give a crap about everything else and just gonna like run through it. It's like, and it did happen. And I feel like a lot of the time it's just us and trying to figure out, okay, is this really what people want? Is this really not good for me? Or is it like, what is it that you really feel aligned to, what your values really are? And then who do you really want to serve and work with? Because until you find that connection and that alignment for yourself, you're always going to take everything personally, right? And then you're not going to see everything in a new perspective, because not everything is about us, right? We have to admit that. And I think it kind of hurts when the first time I realized not everything is about you, Ari. It's like, fine, I get it now. But, just get out of your own shoes sometimes and see how things are from other people's perspective. So that one, I definitely have to share because that really helped me. And I know that probably helped you too. So Becky, how would you say if you would recommend a few tips or maybe share like a few different advices to others who are watching this video? How can others start building their confidence as a woman in design, or even if they own a business themselves like yourself, how would they build that confidence as a woman business owner?
Yeah. First of all, spend less time on the internet. Well, you know, like scroll lightly, I guess is the good way of putting it. You know, go there for inspiration. Like make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that inspire you and don't make you doubt yourself. It's good to have mentors and people to look up to in that digital space too. But I noticed I did like a big spring cleaning like a year ago of Instagram of who I followed, because I was like, that doesn't make me feel good. It sounds so easy, but it's made a huge difference in terms of what I'm seeing every day. Because like, you know, I'll be the first to admit, I love scrolling on Instagram or Pinterest or Facebook, but you know, it really obviously can take a toll on our mental health. So scroll lightly. And then also I would say is surround yourself with people that are going to challenge you, but also support you in that same sense. I say that in coming to Denver, I have found a few people that have become such mentors for me unexpectedly. Like first, I was a fangirl of them. Then I was like became their friend, and now I'm like, no, you're a mentor for me. Like I really look up to you, and it's also helped with the confidence because it's ranged from people who are twice my age to people who are 5 years younger than me, and so I think having that kind of variety really helps. I don't think you should ever surround yourself with this people who do exactly what you do and maybe exactly in the place you're at. I have friends for that too, you know, but it's a time and place for both. And so, having these kind of group of mentors that I've developed here has changed because one of them actually this past week reached out to me asking me about a pricing for a project. And I was like, shouldn't you know that? You're older than me, you know, like you've been around the block a few times compared to me, because he's like in his 50s. And I was like, how do you still not know those answers? But it just goes to show you, nobody really knows the answers. We're all just kind of figuring it out. So, and in a way that builds my confidence because I have somebody I look up to now coming to me with questions, and it makes you realize like how much you know too. And I don't think we take enough time to reflect on that, of being like, wow, I have a lot of knowledge. And sitting down, and kind of going back to what you said earlier about how we feel we need to please everybody. I think that also comes from kind of this digital space we're developing in. And even before that, when I was still in school, I thought, oh, I have to design for every single company, like every niche, everything. And we want to advance our skills, but there's a difference there, you know, like, I can learn Photoshop or Lightroom or video, you know, but it doesn't mean I need to be a videographer now.
Exactly.
It might be something that I can now pull into this other skill set. For me, from going to photography to design, I was able to use my own photos in my design work, which was a huge selling point for me for clients, because now they didn't have to hire a photographer. So, you know, there's times and places for all of that, but Yeah, I think surrounding yourself with the right people makes a world of a difference. If you're around people who are negative, that's going to weigh on you, and you're not going to feel like excited to go to work. You're going to be like, ugh, like I've worked in office spaces like that where everybody just kind of brought each other down. And
Mhm.
that was the last office job I've had. That's all I'll say. I haven't gone back. So
I think when you touch on like having positive people around you and people that you are looking up to, either mentors or mentees and anything in betweens, right? People that inspire you and people who are very positive around you are the ones that are going to give you the inspiration you needed, especially if you want to grow.
yeah.
And I can tell you how many women that I have met in the past that just basically said, I need to get out of my current either network or current environment or current relationship with, because it's just not helping me to grow. It's just like pushing
Yeah.
me down all the time. It's like, well, I know it's a lot easier said than done again, but if you really do want to grow, I feel like you really need to take that step and really figure things out in terms of like what is really your goal and where do you want to go in the future, and surround yourself with people that is pretty much like-minded, like what you
Yeah.
want to be as well.
Yeah. And there are still opportunities. I think that doesn't mean you have to cut every person out of your life,
Yeah.
but that's kind of the cool thing about the social world is there's accounts called like designers humor and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
they kind of reflect on those negative parts of being a designer or being an entrepreneur. And you can
Yes.
sit there and like laugh about it, but then you can move on. You don't have to dwell. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like I have a few good friends that are my age and are fellow creatives, and we'll get together and we definitely build each other up, but we also just kind of complain to each other for a hot minute. And you don't want to feel alone in the struggles you're going through, so you just kind
Yeah.
of like bitch it out for a second and then move on. But
Yes.
it takes time to find those kind of people too.
Oh my goodness, I completely agree. And speaking back to the building that confidence as a woman in design, or even like if you do have your own company, I feel that when I started off as a designer, I mean, I was a freelancer, right? And every single web design freelance that I have come across or I've seen online, almost every single one of them is also a coder or like also
Yeah.
a web developer. And I was like, am I missing out here? I was like, do I need
Oh.
to learn how to code? So I ended up trying to
Mhm.
learn how to code. It did not go well, by the way,
But you
because
tried. But
it
you
just didn't.
tried.
Yeah, I tried, and it did not compute in my brain. I was just like, oh my god, what the heck am I doing? And I think at the same time, I was actually talking to a client, and I talked to him about that struggle that I have, and he actually told me, Ari, you are great in design. Why are you even thinking of doing code?
Yeah.
And I was like, you don't have to be every single little thing.
Yeah.
If that's not something that you really want to do, nor it's not your forte or it's not your top skill, then don't do it. You do what you do best, right?
Yeah. Oh,
So
totally.
yeah, hearing that, it just really helped me build my own confidence in terms of like, I am good at this specific thing and I'm gonna like hit hard on that. And I can always like either outsource or hire somebody else for coding. In fact, my husband is a coder anyway. So
Or you marry somebody who doesn't do what you do, and then you're set.
so there's
No, that's so great that you brought that up because I just recently started outsourcing more.
yeah.
And I'm thinking of how that kind of wheel keeps turning sort of scenario, because now it has left me time and energy to focus on what I do feel passionate about and what I am good at.
Yeah.
And then, I have a girl who does design for me that she like just graduated college, and I just hand off little things to her, but I'm hoping that that helps build her confidence, So it's kind of like we're both working together and like helping each other do what we love to do. So and I think people get afraid to kind of ask for help sometimes too. I guess that's another piece of advice. It's like,
Yeah.
it's okay to not know everything. It's okay to ask those quote unquote dumb questions.
Mhm.
you know, the more, because again, everybody's thinking the same stuff half the time. So why not just vocalize it? I guess it comes from being a loudmouth somewhat, but
Yeah.
for me,
Oh my goodness. Yes, definitely. Agree on that one. So Becky, I know we have one last question for you.
yeah.
What does it mean to live a life outside of your logo?
Yeah. For me, it's all about those relationships. I think that, again, no matter what level of design or my career I've been at, I nurture my relationships. And part of that does come again from what we started with in this topic, like the experiential
Mhm.
marketing side
Yeah.
of evaluating who your audience is. So I view that relationship with the audience as a whole nother thing. So it's just taking the time to really step back and understand that and not just focus on visuals all the time, which is weird coming from a designer.
Yes.
Like I love good branding. And then there's times I'm like, oh my gosh, they tricked people. Like Firefest, you know, it goes to show how good branding really can go far.
Yes.
But yeah, so I mean, it's taking the initial questions and thinking, okay, well, yeah, I have a cool logo. Does that mean I'm going to be Nike? No, because Nike wasn't built in the same time that we now live in.
Hmm.
With Apple, same with all these big companies that clients tend to come to me and they're like, make me look like them. And I'm like, that's clout in a whole different way. And I guess like that's kind of what I refer to when I say like, yeah, living outside your logo. It's like that shouldn't be everything. And it is cool now, you know, we can focus on tone and verbiage. We have platforms that we can now give our actual brand and visuals a voice,
Yeah.
which, you know, it's not like I had to have a commercial on TV to have a voice. So, yeah, I think that there's just so many ways that you can be your brand versus being that logo and being just the visuals. And a lot of it comes from relationships and shaking hands with people or meeting them over Skype or something.
Hmm.
I'd say another thing that kind of leads to that rejection side that I touched upon earlier is I just message people on Instagram constantly, whether I'm saying to them, like, I love your work. I'd love to get a coffee with you someday if you're ever in town, or, hey, I would love to know what program you use for this. Like just asking people and what they're not going to answer. That's the worst, you know, that's going to happen. But
Yeah.
it,
Another rejection, right?
yeah, exactly. Just add it to the list. But it's like, you know, you'd be surprised by how open people will be, but you just kind of have to be that one to open the door, I guess.
Yes. And starting the conversation too.
Yeah, yeah. And then from there, your brand will grow and evolve. You know, I think that's just a part of the natural process.
Hmm.
But it really comes, I think that tone and voice are way more important than even a logo now.
Hmm.
Like I said, that's weird for me to say because I love me a logo design, but it's just the truth.
It is the truth though. And the thing is that I've heard so many different people, even some of our clients just basically say, okay, this is my brand. And they just give me a logo, right? And it's like, well, it is part of your brand,
Yeah,
definitely. It's
but I
like
have no idea who you
visual
are.
representation. Exactly. But
Yeah.
what's behind this? Like, what is it that really make you a brand? Like, what's your characteristic? What's your like audience, your persona, your messaging, and all the different experience that you really want to bring out for your brand? It's not defined yet. So I feel like it's always interesting when we have that talk, and I'm pretty sure you have those talk with your clients
Oh,
too.
yeah.
But building the relationship is also one thing that I value the most, just like you. And I think that's part of the reason that we do events and also video series like this, just to really get to know like people in the industry and just to connect. Like I
Yeah.
feel like with all the things that we have around social media and all the things via internet, it makes the world so small but big at the same time. But then again, real life experience is just something that is not, it's irreversible, right? I feel like when you have a meeting with someone face to face compared to like the virtual talk like this, it takes you to a certain level that makes you feel connected in a personal level with them. So yeah.
It adds like an
Yeah.
opportunity for trust to be built too,
Oh my
because,
goodness. Yeah.
you know, people hunt on websites like Fiverr or something like
Hmm.
that. And I've worked with people who have hired people off Fiverr, and then they're like, oh my God, I don't know who to trust anymore. You know, everything looks nice and shiny online, but then like I start to work with somebody, it doesn't pan out. So, you know, that's another part of it. It's like, ask those right questions. I tell clients right out of the gate, I'm like, look, I'm not going to just deliver you a logo. Like, that's not how this works. We have 2 rounds of branding homework before we even touch brand concepts.
Yes.
So they probably feel like they're going to therapy. They're like, wait, what? Like, you want to know what? And I ask them about fears that they have. It's really crazy. Seth Gooden, the designer, he has a really great journal that he did with Moo, the printing company. And I got it. I don't know if they still have it in production. I bought it, I guess, a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And it makes you answer those tough questions though for yourself even. Like, it's kind of,
you're gonna have to send this to me. I want to see.
I'll send you the link. Yeah, it's like a goal planning journal sort of thing. But it just dives so deep, and a lot of it I've now implemented into my brand homework. I'm like, this is useful.
That's so cool.
And yeah, it takes the scariness out of it and just makes it like, hey, we're humans who all have these same doubts and fears. And again, it all sounds so cheesy when you say it out loud, but it's the truth. So it's helpful.
I feel like we can talk on and on about this creative confidence, and I just love all the things that you have shared with us. Thank you so much, Becky, for all the goodness that you have shared with us, and also to share some of your experience as brand developer and designer.
Yeah, thank you. This was great. I love this series. Keep it up.
Yeah, thank you. Well, everyone, that is all for our interview with Becky Mickletz today. Please subscribe to our channel to watch more Women in Design Spotlight videos. Also, make sure to connect with both myself and Becky online. We'll include the links on the description, and we hope you have a wonderful day. Bye now.